The Saturday afternoon sun beat down hard on the parking lot of Westview Mall. Heat waves shimmered off the black asphalt, looking like liquid glass. The air was thick with the smell of hot pavement, exhaust fumes, and the faint, yeasty sweetness of soft pretzels drifting from the food court. Families strolled between the cars, kids tugging at their parents' hands, and somewhere, a car alarm chirped twice before falling silent. Mikey Peterson sat in his wheelchair near the entrance, waiting for his mum, who had run inside to pick up his medication from the pharmacy. He was 8 years old, with sandy blonde hair, a sprinkle of freckles across his nose, and bright blue eyes that still held a spark, despite everything life had thrown his way. 2 years ago, a car accident had taken away his ability to walk, but it hadn't taken his spirit. His wheelchair was old and patched with duct tape, and maybe a prayer or two, but it was his freedom. It was his legs. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because stories like this remind us that humanity still exists. In every corner of the world, 3 teenagers swaggered over from the side of the building, their laughter loud and mean. They were maybe 16 or 17, decked out in expensive sneakers, and wearing smirks that said they'd never faced a real consequence in their lives. The ringleader, a tall kid with slicked back hair, spotted Mikey sitting alone and elbowed his buddies. "Check it out," he said loudly. "Little crippled kid, all by himself." Mikey's stomach tightened into a knot. He'd heard words like that before. He tried to wheel himself toward the entrance, but the second teenager stepped right in front of him, blocking his path. "Where do you think you're going, short stuff?" the kid sneered. "We're just having a little fun." The third one circled behind Mikey and grabbed the handles of his wheelchair. Before Mikey could even react, he was being pushed across the parking lot, away from the entrance, away from safety. "Please stop," Mikey pleaded, his voice small and trembling. "My mom's coming back." The ringleader just laughed. "Your mom's not here now, is she?" They pushed him to a far corner of the lot, near a row of parked motorcycles. 200 motorcycles, to be exact, chrome and leather gleaming in the afternoon sun. The red and white Iron Horseman patches clearly visible on the backs of riders, who were gathering for a regional meeting inside the mall's conference center, but the teenagers didn't even notice. They were too wrapped up in their own cruelty. The leader grabbed Mikey's wheelchair and tilted it backward, nearly dumping him onto the ground. Mikey cried out, gripping the armrests with white knuckles. "You know what would be hilarious?" the leader said. "Watching you crawl." With a violent shove, he tipped the wheelchair completely over. Mikey crashed onto the hot asphalt, scraping his palms, his cheek pressed against the burning pavement. The teenagers laughed as one of them kicked the wheelchair, bending the frame, snapping the spokes of one wheel. "Have fun getting home now," the leader said, spitting on the ground near Mikey's face. Mikey lay there, tears streaming down his cheeks, his wheelchair destroyed beside him. He couldn't move. He couldn't call for help. All he could do was cry. Then the laughter stopped. The teenagers looked up, and their faces drained of color. 200 Iron Horsemen had emerged from the mall entrance. They had seen everything, every cruel word, every violent act, every tear that fell from that little boy's eyes. At the front stood a massive man named Big Joe, the chapter president, with arms like tree trunks and a beard that reached his chest. Beside him stood men and women of all ages, their faces hard as granite, their eyes burning with a fury that made the teenagers' legs turn to water. Big Joe walked forward slowly, each step deliberate, each footfall echoing across the silent parking lot. The teenagers tried to run, but a wall of leather and muscle had already surrounded them. Big Joe crouched down beside Mikey, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Hey, little man," he said softly. "You okay?" Mikey looked up at the giant biker, tears still wet on his face. "They broke my chair," he whispered. "I can't walk without it." Something shifted in Big Joe's eyes. He looked at the destroyed wheelchair, at the bent frame and broken spokes, and when he stood up, his expression could have melted steel. He turned to the three teenagers, who were now trembling and pale. "You think this is funny?" he rumbled, his voice like gravel scraping bone. "You think destroying a child's wheelchair is entertainment?" the leader stammered. "We were just messing around. It was a joke." Big Joe stepped closer. "A joke?" He gestured to the 200 bikers surrounding them. "Do you see anyone laughing?" The silence was deafening. Big Joe pulled out his phone and dialed. Within minutes, the teenagers' parents had been called. Within an hour, the police had arrived. The teenagers confessed to assault and destruction of property. Their arrogance crumbled into sobbing apologies. That meant nothing to anyone. But Big Joe wasn't finished. He knelt beside Mikey again. "What's your name?" "Kid." "Mikey," the boy said quietly. "Mikey Peterson." Big Joe nodded. "Well, Mikey Peterson, our family doesn't let injustice stand." He looked over his shoulder. "Bring it over." Two bikers wheeled forward a brand new wheelchair. Not just any wheelchair, a custom electric model, with chrome accents, padded leather seats, and the Iron Horseman logo painted on the side in red and gold. It must have cost thousands of dollars. Mikey's eyes went wide. "For me?" Big Joe smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "For you. And there's more." He handed Mikey an envelope. Inside was $5,000 in cash, collected from every member present. "We heard your chair was your freedom," Big Joe said. "Now you've got a new one, and this money is for your family, for whatever you need." Mikey's mother arrived moments later, her face white with fear when she saw the crowd. But when she saw her son sitting in his new wheelchair, surrounded by 200 bikers who had formed a protective circle around him, she burst into tears. "What happened?" she gasped. Big Joe approached her respectfully. "Some punks thought they could hurt your boy," and he explained. "They thought wrong." He gestured to the new chair. "This is from all of us. Your son showed more courage today than those cowards will ever have." Mikey's mother could barely speak. "I can't repay you for this," she whispered. Big Joe shook his head. "You don't have to. Just raise that boy right. He already has more heart than most grown men I know." As the police led the teenagers away, 200 engines roared to life. The Iron Horsemen. They formed a protective escort around Mikey Peterson and his mom, riding slowly, purposefully, alongside them as they walked to their car. The rumble of their engines a promise, a shield, before Big Joe climbed back onto his Harley. He crouched down one last time beside Mikey, making sure he had his attention. "If anyone ever gives you trouble again," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle but firm, "you call this number." He pressed a worn card into Mikey's trembling hand. "Your family now, kiddo, and our family as protects its own." Mikey looked at the card, then up at the giant of a biker, his eyes wide. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice a little stronger now, finding a sliver of hope. Big Joe winked, a genuine smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Stay tough, little brother." And then, with a thunderous roar that shook the very ground, 200 Harleys swept out of the Westview Mall parking lot, chrome flashing like lightning in the afternoon sun, leaving behind a boy who had learned, on this day, that sometimes the real heroes wear leather instead of capes and ride iron horses instead of unicorns. And before we wrap up this story, we have a special request. Comment below with the words "Protect the Innocent" to show you stand with Mikey and every child who's ever been bullied, felt helpless, or been afraid. Because sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fists or muscles, but in choosing to defend those who can't defend themselves. Please like, share, and subscribe if this story even just a little bit, touched your heart. And remember, true courage is not the absence of fear. It's standing up anyway,